Welcome to the Hope for the Animals podcast, a project of compassionate living. I'm your host, Hope Bohannick. Today on the pod, we have a topic that I think is very important, and so few of us think about it. It's around investing our money, like in the stock market, and what you're supporting with those investment dollars. Long ago, I had a regular job. It was at a natural food store, and they offered a 401k plan option. And I decided to look into what they were investing in, what I would be putting my money into. And I was really shocked. It was investing in numerous entities that I did not agree with, and that the natural food store that I worked for and was offering this plan wouldn't support, didn't support with what they bought, and had product policies against these kinds of things for their store. But the investments were in things like Cargill and Procter and Gamble that does massive animal testing. Cargill's a huge animal agribusiness. I mean, it was really awful. And these entities that use animals, terrible chemicals in their products, other things. I can't remember the specifics of it all, but it was nothing good, nothing that I wanted to support. And I asked about it, and they said they didn't have a socially responsible investing option. And that was the first time I'd ever heard about socially responsible investing. So I kind of looked into that, but that was often focused on human rights, like not investing in military, defense, or even whole countries with human rights abuses. Sometimes it's related to that, or it's environmental, green focused, right? Which is all good, but it's still very broad and didn't include any thought about animals. Our options are so limited if we don't want to invest our money in animal industry. That is what our guest today, Claire Smith, is trying to fix. She is thinking about the impact of our money and how we can use it to help animals. So let's get into it. Let's hear all about it. All right, today on the podcast, we have Claire Smith. She is the founder of humane investment platform Beyond Investing. She is a vegan and environmentalist with over 38 years' experience in finance and investment at top tier banks and investment houses. Beyond Investing creates investment programs designed for animal advocates and climate conscious investors in both public listing equity markets and venture capital. She's based in Switzerland. Claire is the founder of Beyond Cruelty Foundation as well. And that was formed, it's a campaign for zero animal exploitation to fund safe havens for animals. And this foundation will also receive a portion of profits from companies under the Beyond Investment umbrella. Welcome to the podcast, Claire.
Thank you very much, Hope. It's really nice to be here with you.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us. I'm glad to have you. This is a really, really interesting angle, right, on activism and our impact on the planet. So I'm excited to talk to you about this. But before we dig in, I want to start with why and when you went vegan.
Okay, so becoming vegan was a bit of a journey. Like most people, I started by becoming vegetarian, and it was a function of research that I did when I was a teenager. I guess I stumbled on information in some respects. I remember one formative example of being confronted with the reality of using animals for food was when I stayed in France. I did an exchange visit in France to a small holding, and there was a very naughty cockerel that was outside who was
Wait, there
quite
was a there
aggressive.
was there
And
was a what?
a cockerel, rooster,
A
you should say.
rooster. Oh, okay, a cockerel rooster. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. That was outside in the yard, and as you know, the children went through into the house, it would chase the children, and it was a little scary. Then there was one meal came out, and it was a chicken, and the family basically said to me, "Oh, c'est le coq méchant." this is the naughty cockerel.
Oh
And although,
no.
yes, and
Oh,
although I have to say I did not like this bird because it was, such a
right.
aggressive beast,
He was.
and
Uh-huh.
wanted to scare everybody out of the farmyard.
He
I
was.
I felt really sad for him. Yes, yes,
Mm,
I felt
yeah.
sad for this bird that he'd been alive a few days before, and obviously my father or whatever had wrung his neck, and he was on the table in front of us.
Oh,
And then there
wow.
was again, I mean, then they also had rabbit hutches where they kept rabbits, and then the rabbit appeared in a dish.
Oh,
Um,
oh my
and
goodness.
and yes, so I was really confronted by it.
Yeah.
It was very disturbing to me to know the animals, and then to see them appear in that fashion.
Yeah.
So on the basis of that experience, I started to do some research. And some of that research came to me in a way that was I had didn't need to necessarily seek it out. And that was because my father had been a farmer. He was retired at that point, but he had been a farmer and was interested in what was going on in farming. And there was this program that was broadcast on the BBC every Sunday at midday called Farming Today. And it was generally an update about the world of farming. During the 1970s, which is when this was being broadcast, there was more and more intensification of farming, and the treatment, animal husbandry, as you might call it, were being promoted on this. And I was very disturbed by what I was seeing, disturbed by, techniques around artificial insemination, around slaughterhouse practices, around mutilation of animals so that they would, put into smaller environments and closer environments, debeaking, which is taking off the end of the beak, or other types of mutilations, castrations, those kind of things were being done. But it's important that I note that this is not vegan propaganda. This was the farming industry producing this program in a completely matter of fact fashion. But anyway, so this was drip, drip, drip. Every Sunday, this program would go on. And obviously, another tradition in the UK is to have a Sunday lunch. So my mother would be in the kitchen slaving away, with the joint in the oven, and
With what in
boiling
the what was it in the
vegetables.
oven? What's in the
The
oven?
joint, so we call it a joint. So a piece of meat that you put into the oven,
It's called a
like a
joint.
piece of beef, is called a joint.
Oh,
Yes, I know it
interesting.
has a different meaning these days.
Yeah,
If you want to
yeah.
say so, if you talk about a joint. But anyway, that's what it was called. So
Uh-huh.
you'd have like a rack of lamb, or a piece of rump steak, or rump,
Oh,
or
yeah.
I don't know, different part of the animal. A generic term for it was the joint.
Huh.
And so that was roasted in the oven. And so after, as I said, a number of weeks of watching this program, or even months, let's say, she came out of the kitchen with this slab of meat that she cooked on a tray and put it on the table. And I basically said, I'm not eating that. And I ate the vegetables, and I said, I'm not going to eat meat anymore. And I also stopped eating fish as well, because as far as I was concerned, a fish was an animal as much as a land animals, mammals, etc., and birds. Um, and my dad's reaction was quite shocked, because he had been in farming and had been told all his life that you needed meat to be healthy, and that it was good food, etc. So he was forever persuading, or trying to persuade me. He was concerned and would try and persuade me to eat meat when there was a meat on the table. He would pick the plate up and try and sort of stick it under my nose, as if that was actually going to make me want to eat it, rather the
Yeah.
reverse. Um, and my mother's reaction was, well, you'd better learn to cook, because I'm not going to make two different meals every
Yeah.
lunch, every dinner time. So so yeah, some people in my family, she's like, were like, what's going on with Claire? She's turning vegetarian. Is she becoming you know, um,
Yeah.
a little bit radical, or what, whatever. Anyway, so I carried on like that, and was vegetarian throughout my sort of 20s into my 30s. But a really powerful emotional moment arrived when I had my daughter. So I became pregnant, and had my daughter in 1998. And I wanted to have, a very natural experience with my daughter. and and to feed her myself. And I had this powerful connection of, well, having given birth to her, cuddling her, etc., but also feeding her at the same time, and that intense bonding moment of as a mammal, which is what we are, of feeding your offspring, which is what every mammal does. It struck me. I remember I was sort of sitting there with my daughter. She was feeding, and I was like, how does a cow feel if they give birth to a calf, are feeding this calf, and then suddenly this calf is taken away while they're obviously still producing milk and for this calf, and then these machines are strapped to them, and instead they're producing milk for these machines. I just tried to imagine how this cow might feel, and also, heard that it was quite common for cows to grieve and to mourn and to make a fuss and to not want, to try and protect their cow, and that for days after the the calf was taken away, they would be bellowing, calling out for their
Mm,
calf, thinking that it would
yeah.
come back. So that was a really powerful emotional moment for me that made it, well, at that point, sort of impossible to continue to consume milk products for a start.
Mm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
And at that point, I was like, well, in that case, let's go full vegan. I was quite well aware of hens that are used to produce eggs, and the
Mm,
terrible situation that they live in. Also, honey. It didn't seem fair to me that the bees were doing all this work to produce honey, which they were doing in the belief that they needed this honey to, survive the winter, as it were, and the honey was being taken away. They're being given just sort of glucose, which is not as nutritive for them
right.
over the winter. So, yes, it just felt unbelievably unfair to these animals. I had to have sort of quite a strong sense of sort of natural justice.
So Claire, I was really excited to hear about your business beyond investing. I think that this is an area that we just don't talk about enough, where our money's going, what we're investing in. But let's start kind of general or larger with the problem. When people are investing in 401ks and bonds and the stock market and whatever, what are they generally investing in?
Okay, so a quick primer on capital markets. When people are investing, they are either buying a share in a company, and it is literally a share, not just the shares as in individual securities, but you're buying a part of that company. Even if you're a very small investor, you might own 0.00000001%, but it is an ownership of that small part of the company. Or if you are investing in bonds, you're effectively loaning money to that company. The typical thing that the man in the street or woman in the street is investing in terms of their 401k, is index funds. And index funds are a product which basically give you sort of everything that is traded. All listed shares are put into various indexes. The indexes may have different cutoff points. So the S&P 500, I think everybody knows, top 500 stocks in the US. And that's this most common thing that people would buy.
So when you are investing, it is very
Mhm.
likely that your money is going into animal agriculture or meat production, dairy and eggs production, oil, fossil fuels, these kinds of things that, certainly we as vegans and also probably a lot of the general public wouldn't really want our money going into. Is so that's correct? Like
That's
a
absolutely,
high.
yes, that's absolutely correct. So the top level categorization of companies in the S&P 500 would include things like communications, consumer staples, energy, financials, healthcare, industrials, materials, real estate, technology, utilities. So within a number of those categorizations, you're going to find things that you might not want to be invested in. So, for example, within energy, the vast majority, if not all, of the energy sector in the S&P 500 is oil and gas. So if you are generally against fossil fuels and wanting to transition from use of fossil fuels into renewable energy, does it make sense for you to be buying an index fund where at the moment about 3.6% of your money is going into oil and gas? Things like the consumer staples that I mentioned before, those staple products are primarily food products, and a lot of those companies are involved in the use of animals. Either they are actual meat companies or chicken producers or dairy companies, or they may be part of the supply chain. So they are producing the animal feed that is going to the animals, or they are distributing these products or retailing these products. So the big supermarket
Right,
groups,
right.
you go into and you see massive freezers full of meat. So we go through the largest stocks to create a portfolio. If you do that, you will find that there are a number of companies that you don't want to be invested in, which fall into a number of these sectors.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to invest in them, then you can't buy an index fund, a regular traditional index fund, and say to the index fund manager, "Oh, I don't want to have this exposure. You need to take it out."
Yeah.
The index is the index. It is what it is.
Yeah.
So if you want anything different, you need to go to a specialist index provider and say, "I need you to create an index which follows my rules, not the S&P 500's rules, my rules." And so we have created an index with vegan rules in it, the
Hmm.
first of its kind.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So there's been socially responsible investing is kind of the term, the kind of broad term that it's been for a few decades just for this, so that you can kind of tailor your portfolio to your values, your ethics. But most of that is focused on human rights and the environment.
Yes,
Uh,
yes, that's correct.
yeah,
Mm.
and not necessarily animal or animal use or vegan or anything. And we ran into this, my husband and I ran into this with his work in that they offered 401k, but you couldn't, they had one that was considered socially responsible, but we dug in, we wanted to see what it actually was investing in. And unfortunately, there was a lot of animal use and animal related industries.
Yes,
So even if you want to do the socially responsible, it doesn't necessarily mean that animals aren't, taken into consideration. So you started the US Vegan Climate Index and the US Vegan Climate Exchange Traded Fund. So
Mhm.
what are these? What does this mean?
Okay. So yes, you are absolutely right in terms of what you're saying about how responsible or sustainable investing. And actually, a lot of the earliest programs were motivated by religious concerns. That is why a lot of the socially responsible investing involves things like the exclusion of tobacco, for example,
Huh,
and
interesting.
gambling and alcohol,
Mm,
because the first people who started to invest in this way were charities or religious associations, so money that the Catholic Church had, that were wanting to screen out those things that they basically preached about and said you shouldn't be doing this. and
mm,
and so that's why those social aspects came in initially. Then we started to see more environmental aspects, and the term SRI, socially responsible investing, started to get overtaken by a new term, which was ESG, which was environmental, social, and governance.
mm,
Okay. So it was bringing in a whole raft of other dimensions and issues around what companies were doing. So it's the social is in there, but then they added the environmental. And then there was another area called governance, which is about how a company runs its operations. So it gets very technical in terms of numbers of women on board, whether the chairman is the same person as the CEO, all sorts of quite technical aspects around the governance of a
Like
company.
ethics
And
of
these,
how they run the company. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and
Mhm.
policies as well, like policies about women and LGBT and those kind of things as well. That
Mhm.
all would fall within that kind of governance. And when we started this, I was like, oh, we're adding the V into ESG,
Ah. Uh-huh.
but because we were adding the vegan concept. And I did a lot of research for my own personal use, the same way as you did, when I started to actually personally manage one of my a pension fund, which I had from work done in the 1990s. And I was able to take it over and self-manage that pension fund. But initially, I was working with a financial advisor and they put it into index funds. And I did exactly the same as you. I looked at the indexes and said, hang on, I don't want to be invested in these. Surely there's a better way of doing things.
Yeah.
And I combed the market for a vegan version of an index fund and couldn't find it. And then in 2016, I was speaking to another a fund manager that I knew well, who was also vegan. We were talking about this problem. We were at an impact investing event, in fact, where a project that was based around grass-fed beef was being promoted to investors. And I actually got very upset because they were talking about the animals in terms of units. We have this many cow units. Like a cow is not a unit, it's a
Yeah.
living being.
Yeah.
And I see, and
Yeah.
I was quite emotional about it because they were objectifying these
Yeah.
animals in
Yeah.
the way that they presented this as an investment opportunity. And so
Mm.
I talked to my friend Larry, who was also there, and he was talking about the style of investing that he was doing. And he'd already created some ethical and sustainable models to do investment, and he was presenting about those. And I basically went to him, I said, we need to create a vegan model of investing. He was like, if you want to do it, Claire, I'll support you. We could start with the database that I have and just, you know, figure out a framework and the way of doing it. So we did, we started that. And then we actually got in touch. Somebody introduced us to another gentleman called Lee, who had been designing policies for animal charities for the last 10, 15 years. So he had already created something of a framework around animal exploitation, which was guiding these charities in the way that they manage their own money so that they avoided investing in animal exploitation.
Hmm.
And we were able to co-opt his work into the work that Larry was already doing in the ESG so that we could add the V into the ESG and create our own index, which embedded all of these principles. So that's how we got started.
So that is the US Vegan Climate Index, the Climate and Exchange Trade Fund. So these are like products, I guess,
Yeah,
portfolios.
an index is just a calculation.
Oh,
You
okay.
can't invest directly in an index.
Okay.
Somebody has to create a product, so a structure, an entity, which then invests in the stocks which are in the index
Ah,
within a fund, within the form of a fund, a mutual fund or an exchange traded fund, which then other people can input their money into.
I see.
Yeah. So we had to create our own index, which applied these rules that we decided we were going to apply in order to take in the E and the S of the environmental and the social, but also add this vegan screen. So we developed policies where we identified all of the forms of animal exploitation that we wouldn't want to be involved in. It's not just about farming animals. It's about obviously animal testing. It's about food processing. It's about fish farming. It's about trapping and hunting products. It's
Yeah.
about captive animals like in zoos, dolphinariums. So we added all of those principles into the screening alongside fossil fuels, around single-use plastics, extractive industries, and as I said, the social ones with an emphasis on human rights. We avoid anything to do with weaponry, guns, obviously child labor, those kind of things. We even take it to the extent that where we see a company is a large supplier to those industries. So I mentioned the animal feed, but we even extend it to banks and asset managers and insurance companies, where if they are specifically catering to animal usage, we also are taking those out as well.
Huh. Wow.
And we
Yes.
also are engaging with companies as well to the extent that we can, even if we don't hold a company, we can engage with them and say, we don't hold you because you're doing this. Why don't you take this out? And with other companies that we do hold, we want them to improve their practices even further, but we wouldn't invest in them if they have an activity which is harming an animal, full stop.
Wow. Wow, I love that you also too still include all the climate concerns, environmental, human rights abuses, defense. I mean, it's, it's a very sounds very comprehensive even beyond the animal issue. And
Yeah.
yeah, and so many vegans, we once you get into being vegan and you've been vegan for a while, we are concerned with issues beyond avoiding meat, dairy, and eggs. And we take the philosophy deeper, like buying household products without animal testing or ingredients, avoiding plastic, trying not to kill the ants in our kitchen, right? I mean, there's
Yep.
all these ways that we expand our compassion. But what we invest our money in,
Hmm.
it's not one of the areas where we consider changing our behavior. It's just not an area that we think about, in the
Sure.
same way. And it's an area that has so much impact. I don't think people realize how much of the oil industry and the meat industry rely on these investments, right? They rely
Hmm.
on people's 401ks to help them to pollute the planet and to harm animals. And we could have
Hmm.
so much impact if we diverted our money to better things. But I don't know any vegans that ever think about this. I mean, and even if they do think about it, I think they might think, well, I don't know what else I can do. I have to have a retirement fund, and so they try not to think about it. And that,
Yes.
but we as a household, my husband and I, we decided not to invest because of
Hmm.
this. And so we don't have a savings
Very,
plan
very
or
good
whatever.
point.
Um,
Very good point. There's a
yeah,
financial inclusion aspect of what we're doing as well, because I also believe, and I miss even myself, I feel that vegans are underinvested and are almost discriminated against in this sense
yeah,
by virtue of the fact that they cannot or have not been able to find products which are suited, investment products that are suited to their need. And
yeah,
and so they probably have less in the stock market than most people, or they don't participate in it at all
yeah,
because of the difficulty of investing in a portfolio of stock, of finding a portfolio of stocks that they can invest in that they can feel comfortable to own.
yeah,
This is, I think, a very true fact. And as you were speaking, then I was just thinking it's a complete anachronism. Every vegan that I know, when they go into a shop, I go you go into the supermarket, you walk up to in the aisle, you walk up to a product, you pick it up, and you don't put it straight in your basket. You turn it around to look at the
mm-hmm.
ingredients list.
Yep,
Yeah. And you examine the ingredients list, and and you better have good eyesight because it's usually extremely tiny. Um, and I'm just thinking about that and thinking how vegans examine the ingredient list of the products that they're buying, but how many of them have actually looked, if they are invested, have actually looked down the holdings list of a
yeah,
fund that they're
yeah,
invested in
that's
and
right.
done the same analysis of that, and gone through it and said, no, I can't invest in this fund because it's not vegan. It's got Tyson Foods in it or whatever.
Yeah,
There's been a recent IPO. If a company IPOs, so that means that it lists its shares on the stock market, and it's a large enough company, the index funds, and there's about 10 trillion of assets that is invested in the S&P 500 or benchmarked to the S&P 500. So the portfolio will be very close to the S&P 500 if it isn't it exactly. When a new company IPOs, all of the index funds then have to buy that company because it goes into the index. So that provides an enormous amount of buying activity in that stock, just because the rules of the index fund are you will buy every stock in this index. So if you have an index which says, I will not buy these companies, I will exclude them, I will only buy the acceptable companies. Well, I wouldn't say that we necessarily saying everything is wholly acceptable, but we are screening out those things which are unacceptable. Yeah. And that means that they are being deprived of that investment. So their stock could well suffer as a result. We have seen it in the tobacco companies. We've seen it in the oil companies. There's been quite strong divestment movements in those areas, which cause those companies to trade at a discount to other companies in the market and to have to pay higher dividends. That's an issue for the company's management because they can't reinvest in their business if they're having to pay out dividends. The essence of this is that in providing this product, we are allowing people, if they haven't got investments, to invest in something they can feel comfortable to own. If they have got investments in some of these other index funds, by virtue of them selling out of those and buying our product, they're actually putting downward pressure on the prices of these companies. And that I think is also a pretty powerful thing.
Do you mean downward pressure as in de-investing is going to hurt that company, but
Yeah,
help the other? Okay. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Hmm.
interesting. Well, and talking about the performance, I'm sure that, Wall Street investors or whatever would say that these kind of funds aren't going to perform as well, that you're not going to get the returns, that you would see from investments like in oil or defense or animal agriculture. And I feel like even if we don't get optimal performance or whatever, it's worth it to me just to support the ethical entities and
Hmm.
just not be putting my money into something else. I mean, just like buying organic is more expensive or doing something better for the planet is often more expensive, right? Or doing the right thing costs more. But your investments are doing well. How do these portfolios, how is it performing?
Well, I'm looking at the May 31st, which is the latest official performance sheet that I have. And I'm seeing that we've outperformed the S&P 500, and this is the actual performance of the fund after all trading fees, management fees, etc. We've outperformed on a 1 month, a 3 month, a 6 month, a 9 month, a 1 year, a 3 year. We've outperformed.
Outperform. Okay. Okay.
We're not marketing the thing as a fund that is guaranteed to outperform by any means. Certainly, that would be um, incorrect
Irresponsible, probably.
and irresponsible
Yeah.
and illegal actually as well,
Oh,
as
wow.
far as the SEC is concerned.
Uh-huh.
We had, we have enough belief in our product that it's going to provide us a very robust alternative to the market. But in actual fact, and especially this year, we've had very good performance and we've had good performance in previous years as well. So overall, if you look at the fund, the US Vegan Climate ETF, whose ticker is VEGN.
I just really quick wanted to hone in on that you have made the acronym vegan without the last A, right? That's the
Yes,
acronym.
that's right.
So that's what you're
Yes,
talking about.
I reserved that ticker. Yes.
The ticker. Okay, so that's what a ticker is, like the nickname of it or
Yeah, it's like a symbol. Yes, it's like
okay.
a code. So
Okay.
Apple is APPL, for example.
Ah, okay, I see. Oh, that's great. That's great that you got that. Okay,
Yeah.
complete what you were saying. I'm so sorry.
Yes, VEGN is the US vegan, the ticker for the US Vegan Climate ETF.
Uh-huh.
And if people look it up, they can look it up on Yahoo Finance and other platforms and see the performance. They will see that it has done very well overall across the period that it's been in existence since September 2019 to the current time, the May 31st, 2026, so the latest full month. And in fact, overall, since inception, on an annualized basis, the performance on market price has been 19.26% per year. whereas the S&P 500 has been 16.66% a year.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
it's got up more.
Oh,
Isn't
okay.
it?
Yeah, great. Okay. Well, this is just very interesting. There's all these different ways that we can make a difference. And here is a place that we just, don't even think about, but it's a huge part of how our whole world is run, right? The economy.
Oh God, yeah, money
Yeah,
talks.
that's right. And so what a fantastic thing that, you're creating this kind of vegan economy and an option to invest more ethically. Really, really wonderful. Well, Claire, I just wrapping up, I don't know if you had any final thoughts about what we've been talking about and before we ask our last question, is there anything else about this you wanted to mention?
I just wanted to encourage people to find out more, to do their own research, obviously, find out more about, about what we're doing and follow us. We have the webpage for the US Vegan Climate ETF, which has all the information, all the legal documents as well that you should review also. The website is actually veganetf.com, VEGAN ETF.com.
So, so you're not financial advisors though. You're not, you don't actually do the investing. You've just created this fund that anyone can invest in, right? Is that right?
Yeah, that's how it works. An exchange traded fund is like a mutual fund, it's a vehicle, and we are actually the advisors to the fund. So we are telling this corporate structure, which is what the ETF is, to buy these shares in these proportions. And then that fund is being bought by investors. And because it's exchange traded, you don't need to fill out a subscription form. All you do is go to a broker. So you need to have a brokerage account, or you need to have a financial advisor that acts on your behalf, who then invests in however many shares of the ETF that you want to buy.
Okay. And can you, if you have like a 401k through your work or your business that you work for, can you ask them to to invest? I don't know. This may be getting too detailed.
I can answer that question.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
You can always ask, but if you are working for a company that has engaged a pension plan to put together, a way for their employees to make retirement savings, unless that plan is very, very flexible, it's unlikely they will say yes.
Oh, okay. That's too bad.
Often these plans are tied to a particular asset manager who creates a certain number of funds of different types. And it's very unlikely. Well, I mean, I can guarantee that none of them would apply the vegan screens that we're applying, because I don't
Mm,
know of anybody else who is doing that.
okay. Okay.
Um, there are ways to create your own retirement plan. Simple IRAs and Roth IRAs are a couple of examples, and a financial advisor will be able to guide you through the steps to create that plan, where you are directing the investment and you would be able to say, yes, I want the VEGN fund in my plan.
Fantastic. Just really wonderful work. Thank you for,
Yeah.
honing in on this very, very
Hmm.
important aspect.
Mm.
So Claire, I'm going to ask our last question. What gives you hope for the future?
Well, I mean, partly what gives me hope is the fact that we've been kind of moderately successful in terms of what we're doing. We've survived at this point. A lot of ETFs basically die. They don't get to enough assets, and so they have to be closed down because the level of assets are not enough to cover the operating costs of running an ETF.
Hmm.
So that gives me some hope that we did find an audience. We have found an audience, and we're expanding the investment opportunities for that audience, and we want to grow even further and provide products for European investors as well, who at the moment are find it very difficult to invest in the ETF. So that gives me some hope. Other things that give me hope is that on the other side of our business, which is in venture, we are seeing some improvement in the investing environment and capital environment for startups that are creating products that replace the use of animals. And we're seeing quite a lot of government interest in this in terms of particularly food transition, food system transition,
Oh,
and
yeah.
making the food system far more resilient and improving food security. Because another thing we haven't touched upon is that animal agriculture is extraordinarily inefficient and wasteful in
Yeah.
terms of the process of feeding food to an animal in order that the animal can become food for humans. There's an enormous amount of waste in that. So I am feeling more hopeful, a lot more hopeful, because of some initiatives that I've become aware of and we are actually involved in that will hopefully get a lot more money going into this area so that these companies can grow and have more of an impact by literally taking market share from the companies that are using animals.
Yeah, well, this makes me very hopeful that, that there's even this option now that we're looking at these kinds of areas of really global importance where our money is invested, and that we're now having options to not be involved, not invest our money in animal exploitation. I thank you for that, Claire, and I love this work that you're doing. And yeah, it's very exciting. Thank you. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Hope for the Animals podcast, a project of compassionate living. I hope if you have money invested or thinking about investing, or if you have an account like a 401k through your work, that you will look into Beyond Investing and these options, this fund option, this vegan fund, and tell your financial people about it. Get it on their radar, even if they don't give you the option, like if it's through a workplace and, they're not going to do it, at least they know that it's something that their employees want. Tell your vegan friends about it. Let's get our money divested in animal abuse. Take it out of animal abuse and animal use and animal industry. We won't support it at the grocery store. We won't support it at the restaurant. Why would we support it in our investments and our portfolios and our 401ks? So, all the links to get the information are in the show notes. Get educated and have this be an area where we also make change in our lives for the animals. Thanks for listening and live vegan.